Oh, can you believe it? The chainsaw roared to life at exactly 5:00 a.m., shattering the peaceful silence of the neighborhood like a thunderclap on a quiet night. Sparks flew everywhere as metal met metal, and the ear-piercing screech echoed down the pristine, HOA-regulated street. Talk about a wake-up call. Lights flicked on one by one in every house, like a domino effect of curiosity and chaos. Blinds shifted ever so slightly. Neighbors peeked out horrified yet totally intrigued by the madness unfolding before their sleepy eyes. And right there, smack in the middle of it all, standing in her perfectly manicured driveway in a wild leopard print robe and those fuzzy slippers that screamed cozy defiance, was Karen, the self-proclaimed, undisputed queen of the Homeowners Association. Her mouth, wide open in utter shock. Can you even imagine the look on her face? I didn't stop. No way was I backing down now. I revved that chainsaw again, louder this time, slicing through the old wooden fence that had sparked this entire ridiculous mess. If she didn't want a fence, fine by me. Oh, but I had a better idea, a much bigger, bolder, jaw-dropping idea. And Karen? She was about to find out just how far I was willing to take this showdown. Bring it on, right? Moving into this neighborhood had felt like stepping into a dream at first. Seriously, who wouldn't love it? The kind of place where lawns were trimmed to absolute perfection, sidewalks sparkled spotless under the sun, and kids rode their bikes without a single care in the world. I had just bought my first house. Can you say milestone moment? A stunning two-story beauty with a big, sprawling backyard. It was a far cry from the cramped, stuffy apartments I'd been stuck in for years. This was supposed to be my escape, my peaceful little slice of heaven on earth. Does not that sound divine? But hold up, turns out heaven had a gatekeeper, and her name was Karen. Yep, Karen. I first met her within 24 hours of moving in. Talk about a fast introduction. There was no warm welcome. No friendly plate of cookies to soften the blow, just a sharp, impatient knock on my door that rattled my nerves. Then in marched this woman in her mid-50s, armed with a clipboard, flashing a tight, fake smile and rocking the kind of haircut that just screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." You know the type, right? "Daniel, is it?" She barked, not even waiting for me to nod. "I'm Karen, the HOA president. I just wanted to go over a few things." A few things? Oh, please. That few things turned out to be a printed list of violations I'd apparently committed before. I'd even unpacked my last moving box. Can you believe the nerve? My mailbox was half an inch too tall, half an inch. My garbage cans were in the wrong spot, excuse me. What? And my grass, my fresh, brand new grass was, according to Her Royal Highness, the wrong shade of green. The wrong shade? Who even notices that? I tried to be polite. Oh, I really did. I swallowed my pride and nodded along. But after her third visit in 2 days, where she had the audacity to criticize my porch light for being too bright, I started to see the light myself. Karen wasn't just a concerned neighbor doing her duty. No, she was on a full-blown power trip. And me? I was her latest target, her punching bag, her victim of the week. How lucky am I? Then came the fence incident. Oh, buckle up, because this is where it gets good. I had built a simple wooden fence, nothing fancy, nothing outrageous, just your average, everyday privacy fence. Why? To keep my dog from wandering off, and let's be real, to keep Karen's nosy eyes out of my backyard. Can you blame me? The moment she laid eyes on it, you'd think I'd set the entire neighborhood ablaze. "You can't just put up a fence," she shrieked, storming up my driveway like a tornado in leopard print. "It violates HOA policy." Seriously, Karen? I blinked, totally dumbfounded. "There are literally fences all over the neighborhood. Have you seen them?" I shot back. "Those were approved," she snapped, like that explained everything. "Yours is an eyesore." An eyesore? How is mine different? I asked, genuinely curious. Because, she huffed, folding her arms like a petulant child. I don't like it. Oh, wow, did she really just say that out loud? That's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules or the neighborhood's precious aesthetic. This was about control. Pure and simple Karen's control over me. She started fining me almost immediately. Talk about petty. First came a warning notice, then an official violation, then daily fines, $50 today, 100 tomorrow. It was beyond ridiculous, absolutely insane. But when I asked for proof, some shred of evidence that my fence broke any actual rules, she had nothing. Zilch. Nada, because legally speaking, I hadn't done a darn thing wrong. Can you believe the gall? So I did the only logical thing. I ignored her. Yep. I turned the other cheek and went about my life. Take that, Karen. And that's when she really lost it. Oh, you should have seen her. One morning, I stepped outside, coffee in hand, minding my own business, and there she was, measuring my lawn with a tape measure, scowling like a disappointed schoolteacher who'd caught me cheating on a test. A week later, she had a tow truck ready to haul away my perfectly registered car. Why? Because it was parked at the wrong angle? Are you kidding me right now? She even went as far as calling the city on me, claiming my fence was creating an unsafe environment. Unsafe? For who? The grass? That was it, the final straw. I was done playing nice, done. If Karen wanted a war, oh boy, she was going to get one, and I was bringing the big guns. I called up my buddy Jake, an engineer, with a wild streak and a love for over-the-top projects that could make your jaw drop. When I told him what was going down, he laughed so hard I thought he'd drop his phone right then and there. Dude, he wheezed, barely catching his breath. You need to go nuclear. Build a fortress? No, wait, build a barricade. A barricade? At first, I thought he was joking crazy, right? But the more I mulled it over, the more I loved it. Oh, how I loved it. If she thought my little wooden fence was a problem, she hadn't seen anything yet. Bring on the chaos. I spent the next 2 weeks drawing up plans not for some puny fence, but for a 15-foot-tall steel reinforced barricade. Can you picture it? I checked the HOA rulebook twice, heck, 3 times just to be sure. Nowhere did it say a single word about steel barricades. Nope, not a peep. There were rules about wood, vinyl, even hedges, but nothing, absolutely nothing about towering metal walls. Oh, the loophole of a lifetime. So I made some calls, got a contractor who was ready to move fast, paid extra for expedited materials because why not go all in, and set a construction date. Game on, right? And that brings us to today. Oh, what a glorious day. At 5:00 a.m. sharp, I fired up that chainsaw and tore down the old fence in the loudest, most obnoxious way possible. Did it feel good? You bet it did. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I was more than happy to match her energy. And then some. Bring it, Karen. By the time she stumbled out of her house, still half asleep in that leopard print robe, bless her heart, my crew was already unloading the massive steel sheets. The look on her face? Priceless. Absolutely priceless. What in God's name are you doing? She shrieked, charging up my driveway like a woman possessed. I turned off the chains, grinned like the cat that ate the canary, and said, just making some updates, Karen. You were right. The old fence had to go. Oh, the satisfaction. Her eyes darted to the towering steel panels being drilled into place. Can you imagine her panic? This is illegal, she sputtered. I pulled out my copy of the HOA rulebook, the very one she'd used to harass me for weeks, and flipped to the relevant section with a flourish. Actually, Karen, there's no rule against this. Surprise. Her? Gasp? Straight out of a Victorian novel? Did she really think she'd win this round? You can't do this, she cried, practically trembling. I can, I said, smiling wider than ever, and I am. Watch me. She stormed off, mumbling about an emergency HOA meeting. Good luck with that, Karen. But me? I wasn't worried, not one bit. Because For the first time since moving in, I was actually excited for this battle. Oh, and I'd only just begun. The barricade came together faster than I could have dreamed. By the time the sun fully rose, half the steel sheets were bolted into place. The sound of drilling and hammering echoed down the street, talk about a symphony of defiance. It didn't take long before the whole neighborhood was awake. Watching in stunned silence, can you feel the tension? Some whispered among themselves, others gawked like they were at a crime scene, and then there was Karen pacing her driveway, clutching her phone like it was her last hope. She was calling the HOA board, no doubt demanding an emergency meeting, desperate to stop me. But here's the kicker. There was nothing she could do, nothing. The barricade was legal checked, double checked, triple checked. No rules against steel walls, no height restrictions, everything was within my rights. And Karen? She hated it. Oh, how she hated it. An hour later, just as my crew secured the final steel panel for the day, Karen stormed over again, this time with a man in a cheap suit trailing behind her. "This is Mr. Patterson, our HOA lawyer," she announced, voice dripping with triumph. "Really, Karen?" The poor guy looked pale, nervous, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "He's here to tell you this monstrosity violates community standards," she crowed. I turned to Mr. Patterson, poor soul, and asked, "Is that true?" He cleared his throat, fidgeting with his tie. "Well, not exactly. The guidelines don't explicitly ban this." "But," Karen cut in, "flailing, it's an eyesore. It's offensive. It's ruining property values." I smirked. Oh, the déjà vu. "Funny you said the same about my wooden fence." Her face, redder than a ripe tomato, priceless. Mr. Patterson, stuck between us, finally said, "Legally, there's not much we can do. The board would need new rules, and they wouldn't apply retroactively. Daniel's within his rights." Karen's jaw clenched. Did you just crack a tooth? And I knew this war was far from over. "Oh, can you even believe the nerve of this woman?" "Fine," Karen spat, her voice dripping with venom that could have melted steel. "If the HOA won't lift a finger to stop this madness, I'll take it straight to the city. You just wait." "Daniel, oh, you just wait. You think you're so clever, don't you? But mark my words, you're going to regret every second of this." I stood there, watching her storm off in a huff, practically dragging that poor, nervous lawyer behind her like a rag doll caught in a tornado. The second she vanished into her pristine little castle of a house, one of my neighbors, good old Mike, an older guy who'd been around the block for years, strolled over, grinning ear to ear like a kid who'd just witnessed the prank of the century unfold before his very eyes. "Son," he chuckled, barely containing his glee, "I don't know what Karen did to light this fire under you, but holy cow, I've never been more entertained in my entire life. Heck, I'll even chip in for materials if it means watching her lose her ever-loving mind over this." I laughed, oh how I laughed, and gave him a hearty clap on the back. "Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate the support. But trust me, I've got this covered, and then some." Over the next few days, that barricade of mine, it became the talk of the town, seriously. The hottest gossip to hit this sleepy neighborhood in years. Some folks were downright furious, can you imagine? While others couldn't stop giggling at the sheer absurdity of it all. But no matter where they stood, one thing was crystal clear. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone was buzzing about it. Even the local news caught wind of our little showdown. How wild is that? And sent a reporter to whip up a segment they dubbed the Suburban Battle of the Century. I mean, come on, doesn't that just sound epic? Karen, though? Oh, she was on a mission, a one-woman crusade to shut me down. She filed complaint after complaint with the city, throwing out every excuse in the book. My barricade was a public safety hazard. It blocked emergency services. It was structurally unsound. Heck, she even claimed it was single-handedly ruining the charm of our precious community. Can you believe the drama? But here's the kicker. None of it stuck, not a single word. City inspectors rolled up, Took one good look at my permits I'd triple-checked, mind you, and told her flat out, "Sorry, lady, there's nothing we can do." Oh, did that ever set her off? She got angrier than a hornet's nest poked with a stick and started harassing my workers. Can you picture it? Marching right up to them in broad daylight, demanding to see their licenses like she was some kind of self-appointed sheriff. When that flopped because, duh, they weren't fazed, she even tried bribing them to stop construction. Bribing them. Who does that? But my crew? Total pros, absolute legends. They weren't about to ditch a solid paycheck just because some entitled HOA queen was throwing a tantrum. Good for them, right? And just when I thought she'd run out of tricks, oh, you'll never guess what she pulled next. She went big and called a full-on town hall meeting. Yep, a town hall meeting. I got the official notice in my mailbox, written in that aggressive, over-the-top legalese that only Karen could dream up. Seriously? Who writes like that? The whole HOA board was summoned, along with a handful of select homeowners, all to discuss urgent community matters. Translation? She was staging a public execution, and guess who was the guest of honor? Me. But was one sweating it? Not a chance. In fact, I was pumped. Bring it on, Karen. The meeting went down in the local community center, a dusty old relic that hadn't seen a facelift since the early 90s. By the time I strolled in, the place was packed to the gills. Homeowners crammed into rows of rickety metal folding chairs, whispering and sneaking glances. My way, some curious, some downright amused. Up front, perched behind a long table like a panel of stern judges, sat the HOA board members. And right there, dead center, smirking like she'd already won, was Karen, looking smugger than a cat with a canary in its mouth. I grabbed a seat near the back, arms crossed, just waiting for the fireworks to start. Oh, this was going to be good. Karen didn't waste a second. She leapt to her feet, cleared her throat like she was about to deliver the speech of the century, and launched into a tirade that sounded like she'd rehearsed it in front of her bathroom mirror for days. She ranted about tradition, community standards, how my barricade was a monstrous threat to everything our neighborhood stood for. Can you even imagine? She painted me as some reckless, selfish troublemaker who'd swooped in and shattered the HOA's precious harmony. Then she spun on her heels and faced the board, all fire and fury. "I demand we take immediate legal action against this outrageous violation," she declared, like she was rallying troops for battle. "If we let this slide, what's next? Neon-colored houses? Junk cars on lawns? Total anarchy! Anarchy over a wall!" I had to bite my tongue to keep from busting out laughing. Seriously, is she for real? But then Janet, one of the board members, an older lady with a no-nonsense vibe, cleared her throat. "Karen," she said, calm as you please, "we get your passion for the community, but we've gone over the guidelines with a fine-tooth comb. Daniel's Construction? It's not breaking any rules." Karen's eyes practically popped out of her head. "Did you see that coming? Then we changed the regulations." She barked, desperate now. Janet sighed, like she'd heard this song and dance before. "We can vote on new rules, sure, but they won't apply retroactively, you know that." The room went dead silent. Karen's face twisted up in frustration, her fingers gripping her papers so tight I thought they'd rip. Oh, she knew she'd lost this round. But me? I couldn't resist twisting the knife just a little. Why not, right? I raised my hand and stood up, cool as a cucumber. "If the HOA's so worried about community standards," I said, loud and clear, "maybe we should look into some of the questionable calls leadership's made." Karen whipped around to glare at me. "Ooh, if looks could kill." "What are you implying?" she snapped. I flashed her a grin. "Oh, this felt good. Just saying I've been poking through the HOA's financial records. Funny how some fines seem to vanish when they involve certain folks." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Did I just stir the pot or what? Karen's face flickered with panic just for a split second before she plastered on her usual scowl. But I saw it, and so did everyone else. Busted. Janet leaned forward, hands clasped. Daniel, care to share more on that? She asked. All business. Oh, absolutely, I said, shrugging like it was no big deal. I've got copies right here. Karen's face? White as a ghost, priceless. Right then I knew this war was nowhere near over, oh no way. But for the first time, I wasn't the one backed into a corner. Karen had spent weeks coming for me, and now it was my turn to strike back. Game on. The next morning, Karen didn't show, can you believe it? No dramatic showdown, no stomping up my driveway, no wild threats. It was like the neighborhood held its breath. For weeks, her presence had loomed over everything, and now, eerie quiet, almost too quiet. But don't get it twisted, I wasn't naive enough to think she'd wave the white flag. Karen? Give up? Ha! If she wasn't in my face, that meant she was scheming behind closed doors, mark my words. I didn't have to wait long to find out what she was cooking up. Oh, here we go. Around noon, a sleek black SUV rolled up to my house, and out stepped this guy, tall, clean-shaven, adjusting his tie like he was prepping for the spotlight. He had that stiff government official vibe, complete with a leather briefcase and the city's emblem pinned to his lapel grate. Karen went big time. I met him on the porch before he could even knock. Bring it on, buddy. Daniel, right? He asked, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I know your type. That's me, I shot back. Let me guess you're here about the barricade? He nodded, all business. John Richards, city zoning inspector. Got a formal complaint about a possible code violation on your property. I'm here to check it out and make sure everything's kosher with local regs. I smirked. Really now? By formal complaint, you mean Karen, right? He paused, then cleared his throat. Caught ya. Can't say who filed it, but I assure you, this is routine. Routine, my foot. Totally normal for a city guy to pop by over a legal structure that's driving the neighborhood tyrant up the wall. Sure, Jan. I stepped aside, waving him on. Go ahead, take a look. John circled the barricade, whipping out a measuring tape, scribbling notes like he was on a mission. I could see it in his eyes. He wanted to nail me, to hand Karen her precious win. But after 15 minutes of poking around, guess what? He sighed and stuffed his notepad back in his briefcase. Well, he said, sounding deflated, everything's up to code. No violations here. I grinned. Told ya. That's what I figured. He shifted, looking uneasy. Oh, what now? Look, he muttered, dropping his voice. Off the record, I don't usually get dragged into stuff like this. But your HOA president? She's persistent. I snorted, understatement of the year. That's one way to say it. Between us, he added, she's already filed 3 more complaints. If you don't tear this down, she's not stopping. I leaned against my barricade, arms crossed, and grinned. Let her try. John sighed, gave me a nod, and headed back to his SUV. As he peeled out, I caught Karen peeking from behind her curtains. She yanked them shut the second our eyes met. Furious? Oh, you bet. And me? More fired up than ever. Bring it, Karen. 2 days later, another official HOA letter landed in my mailbox. No surprise there. But this time, Karen wasn't just threatening fines, she was gunning for a full-on legal brawl. Can you believe the escalation? This war? It's only heating up. Watch out. Oh, can you believe the audacity of this letter? It slammed me with accusations of willful defiance of community standards and declared that the HOA was gunning for a court order to rip down my barricade. Seriously, Karen? It was laughable, downright hilarious. She was acting like I'd plopped a toxic waste dump in my yard instead of building a perfectly legal structure on my own dang property. But if she wanted to drag this mess into court, oh, bring it on. I was more than ready to throw down. I called up my lawyer, practically shoved that ridiculous letter into his hands, and told him, let's do this. Within a single day, can you imagine how fast he moved? He'd whipped up a counterclaim that didn't just defend my right to keep that glorious barricade standing tall, but also turned the tables on Karen. We hit her with harassment, selective enforcement of those precious HOA rules she loved to wield like a weapon, and get this financial misconduct within the association. Oh, the plot thickens, doesn't it? And that's when everything flipped upside down. Holy cow, what a twist. A week before our big court showdown, a bombshell dropped kaboom, and it was a doozy. My lawyer, that brilliant sleuth, had been digging through HOA records like a bloodhound on a scent trail, hunting for any little inconsistency. And guess what he uncovered? Something massive, huge. Karen had been dipping her sticky fingers into HOA funds for years. We're talking small amounts sneaked here and there, cleverly disguised as administrative fees, personal reimbursements, and vague maintenance costs, with zero receipts to back them up. Can you believe the gall? The total wasn't some jaw-dropping fortune, but oh, it was plenty enough to raise some serious eyebrows. More importantly, it was enough to drag the rest of the HOA board into this delicious drama game changer, right? The next HOA meeting was supposed to be all about my barricade yawn, same old song and dance, but instead, oh, it turned into Karen's public reckoning. Can you feel the tension? The room was packed to the rafters. Homeowners squeezed into every seat, and a few even had to stand in the back standing room only, folks. People who'd never given two hoots about HOA politics before were suddenly glued to the action, like they'd bought front row tickets to the showdown of the century. Even the board members looked jittery, whispering nervously and shuffling papers like they knew a storm was brewing. Karen sat smack in the center of that long table up front, her usual smug confidence swapped out for this tight, visible tension. Did she sense the hammer about to drop? Oh, she had no idea how bad it was about to get. The meeting kicked off, and Karen predictably launched right into her tired old speech. Daniels defied the HOA, she whined. His barricades destroying our neighborhood's integrity. Blah, 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 heard it all before, right? But then, oh, here comes the good part. My lawyer stood up, cool as a cucumber, and dropped the mic. Before we get to the barricade, he said, all calm and collected, there's a bigger issue that needs our attention right now. He slapped a fat stack of documents onto the table and slid them toward the board like a poker player revealing a winning hand. These are financial records from the past 5 years, he announced, voice steady as steel. They show a clear pattern of unauthorized expenses charged to the HOA budget approved solely by Karen Reynolds, your acting president. Boom, did you hear that silence? The room went dead quiet like someone hit the mute button. Karen froze in her chair, stiff as a board. This is absurd, she blurted, way too fast. I've always acted in the community's best interest. Oh, really, Karen? My lawyer didn't miss a beat, Bam. Then you won't mind an independent audit, I assume? He fired back. A murmur erupted through the crowd, whispers, gasps, wide-eyed looks everywhere. The board members flipped through those damning papers, their faces darkening with every turn of the page. Oh, Karen. Janet, one of the board, looked up, her voice careful but firm. Karen, she said, these are serious accusations. If you can't explain these transactions, we might have to vote on removing you from the board. Remove her? Oh, snap. Karen's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. Did you see that panic? For the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely scared, terrified. You can't do this, she cried, her voice trembling like a leaf in a storm. I've poured years into this community. But then, oh, bless him, Mike, my trusty neighbor who'd been cheering me on from day one, shot to his feet. Yeah. And you've made our lives miserable every step of the way, he roared. You know what? I vote to kick her out right now. A few voices chimed in, then more, then bam, within seconds, the whole room exploded with cheers for Karen's removal. Can you picture it? Absolute chaos in the best way. The board members swapped glances, nervous, unsure, until Janet took a deep breath and dropped the gavel. Effective immediately, she declared. Karen Reynolds is suspended from the HOA board, pending a full financial review. Karen bolted up from her chair, face pale as a ghost, hands shaking like crazy. "This isn't over," she hissed under her breath, snatching her purse and storming out of the meeting like a hurricane on the run. But oh honey, it was over. Done as oh. A month later, get this, Karen slapped a "for sale" sign on her lawn. See wouldn't want to be The HOA dropped their silly lawsuit against me. Poof, gone. And my barricade, still standing proud, baby. In fact, it turned into a local legend, a towering symbol of sticking it to ridiculous HOA tyranny. How cool is that? As for me, oh, you'll love this. The next HOA election rolled around, and a few neighbors jokingly tossed out, "Hey, Daniel, you should run for president." I didn't even have to lift a finger, no campaign, no speeches. I won by a landslide. Can you believe it? From barricade rebel to HOA king, what a ride.